Many years ago, when I first started work in a law firm, I had a senior partner who was very open about his faith. He tells everybody he's a Christian. Not only that, he was an elder in his church as well. And you would think that that's a good thing. Unfortunately, the way this guy conducted himself and the way he treated people really turned people off. And many of my colleagues came to me and said, "Hey, you Christian?" Say, "Hey, this guy, how can he be a Christian and still behave like that?" And it was so sobering to me because most of these people who came to me to say that were not Christians. And I realized that the reality is even non-Christians expect Christians, or hold Christians up to a certain standard and expect Christians to behave in a certain way that is consistent with what they claim they believe in. And they are absolutely right to do that. So for those of us who say that we are followers of Jesus Christ, a crucial question that we've been asking and that we need to keep asking ourselves is this. Do the non-Christians around me think about, what do they think about the consistency between my beliefs and my behavior? And hopefully, when we evaluate that, the answer would not be, how can he call himself Christian and behave like that? Now, we have covered a substantial portion of the book of James, and you know by now, okay, you can see for sure by now that James is constantly addressing this very issue throughout his letter. He's basically challenging us, our beliefs, and asking us, are we really sure that we are Christians? Are we sure that we have been saved? To make that, he's very practical about it because he says that if you are saved, if you have genuine faith, then it will come out visibly in different ways, in every way actually, in your life. When you face trials and difficulties, you will rejoice. You would, when you face temptations, you effectively resist them. You would be taking care of, he says, the widows and orphans, the poor and the weak in our society. You would treat people without discrimination, right? You will control the use of your tongue, and generally, you will put what you say into action. And he says, are you doing all that? Because there are many things we can be wrong about in life, and actually, we will survive, we'll get by. But this is one issue. If you're wrong about it, that's the end. Okay? It's the heaven and hell, life and death difference. So are you sure you're having genuine saving faith? Now, in today's passage, James continues with the same theme, but he adds a new dimension to it. He has focused on the kind of life we ought to be living if we have authentic faith. But now he goes on beyond that to talk about the kind of church we ought to be building if we have authentic faith. So he's interested in not just what genuine Christian living looks like, but also what genuine Christian community looks like as well. And this follows logically from what Pastor Wickett spoke on last week. Right? A contrast between true and false wisdom, heavenly and demonic wisdom. And it's good to start from that because what I'm going to say today flows logically from that. So let's go back to the passage last week, James chapter 3, verses 13 to 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by the good life, by deeds done in the... Okay, sorry. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. I believe Pastor Wiki has already pointed out, when you look at all this description of wisdom, one thing that comes across clearly is that wisdom, whether it's true wisdom or false wisdom, has very visible effects on relationships and community. Because most of the words that James uses here to describe the effects or the nature of wisdom has to do with the way we relate to each other. And he says that false wisdom results in disorder, whereas true wisdom is peace-loving and sows peace. That's why today's message is entitled Building Good Relationships. And I believe that's something all of us want, right? That's what we all want. I mean, nobody sets a goal in life to have conflicts with everybody or to destroy the community they are in. And yet, even though all of us have this longing, the reality is that disputes and disharmony exists everywhere we go. That's why, whether you're a Christian or not yet a Christian, the biblical principles here that I'm going to share with you today are applicable to you. If you follow them, you will enjoy good relationships and you will build up your community, whether we're talking about your family, talking about church, your cell group, or talking about your school, your workplace, your army camp. And you help to build up a community. On the other hand, if you violate these principles, you will end up eroding or even destroying your relationships, and you add to the disorder in your community. And in particular, James, in today's passages, actually, James addresses two relational problems, okay? Strife and slander. Let's start with the first one, strife. Number one, strife and selfish desires. Now, we know Russia has invaded Ukraine, even though all the warning signs have been there for a long time. The whole world still reacted with shock, dismay, and even disbelief. And many people are asking, how can this happen? Or they're asking, why are they doing this? We don't understand. Especially, I think, those people who have lost a lot of money on the stock market, right? Now, we will never know what exactly is going on in this guy, Vladimir Putin's mind, but we know for a fact what is driving him. Because whether we are talking about a shooting war between nations or just petty bickering between individuals, the underlying cause is exactly the same. And James talks about it here, okay, in chapter 4, verses 1 to 4. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet and cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. Here we have some really profound and powerful insights, okay, as to the cause of strife, why there is so much conflict and hostility in the world and between people. And James says that they come from the desires that battle within you. Your desires that battle within you. So the source, the real source of conflict is inside all of us, every one of us. Good and evil wage an endless war with each other within our souls. We may denounce people like Putin, people like Hitler, and say, wow, that's a really evil people. And I guess they are. But what we don't realize and acknowledge is that actually evil lurks inside all of us. The Russian writer and philosopher Alexander Solzhenitsyn was imprisoned in the Russian Gulag for many years, and he gave us this powerful insight. He wrote this. Okay? He said, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes of people, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. And what he says agrees totally with how the Bible describes the condition of the human heart. The Apostle Paul wrote a very famous passage in Romans chapter 7, verses 21 to 27, where he says, so, 24, I think, so I find this law at work, although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. So, this is better. And I mean, just think about who is writing this. Okay, it's the Apostle Paul, right? The guy who wrote most of the New Testament, the one who received direct revelation from God. And if he says he struggles with this, you can be sure all of us will have to engage in this struggle also. And the point is this: all conflicts begin internally within our hearts. We engage in fights on the outside because we had a fight on the inside of us, and it's only when we lose the fight on the inside that we start fights outside of us. And we understand that. What it means is this: if we want to avoid strife, and if we want to resolve conflicts, if we want to have unity and harmony, if we want a good community, then every one of us need to humble ourselves, be honest with ourselves. Don't just keep blaming other people. We need to recognize that it is our desires that contribute to the problem. Why do our desires result in conflicts? James tells us it is the same reason why God often does not grant our prayers, because we have selfish motives. Now, most of us, I think, don't really believe that we are very selfish people. But actually, we are mistaken, because the truth is that all of us grapple with selfishness all the time, every day, okay, and many times a day in our lives. You see, let me explain to you why. There are really only two ways to relate to other people. Whatever way you look at it, at the end of the day, there are only two ways we all relate to each other. The first way is my needs before your needs. Okay, my needs come before your needs. The second way is your needs come before my needs. The first way is I give my life for your life. The second way is you give your life for my life. And these are really the only two ways that we relate to people all the time. And we struggle constantly to have to choose between these two options. That war rages in every human heart all the time, every day. Most of us are not conscious of that tussle, that tug of war, because, selfishness operates in stealth mode, right? And over time, we've learned to cover it up with all kinds of things, nice-sounding things, right? We think that we say things like, oh, sorry, I'm very busy at work, so I can't be involved. Or, I need to spend time with my family, so you guys go ahead. Okay, I got a project to do in school, so I can't be there. And we give all this, and we think that we're making these decisions. But actually, there is a decision beneath all those decisions that we are making all the time. And that decision is simply this: is it my need above your need, or is it your need above my needs? Every time someone decides to put his or her own needs first, what happened? Okay, what happened is that you will weaken relationships and you will destroy community. But every time someone decides to put other people's needs, as more important their own needs, then you will strengthen relationships and you will build community. Okay, that is what happens in our relationships, and we do that all the time, and the results follow invariably. Now, modern culture tells us that we are the product of our own choices, decisions, and efforts, right? That basically you're self-made. Okay, you choose your path, you make your decisions, you put in the effort, and then you enjoy the outcome. But the truth is this: listen, none of us will be here today. None of us will enjoy the good things we have if many other people had not chosen to put our needs before their own needs. I mean, just think about how you were conceived and born. You exist only because your mother went through a lot of discomfort to bear you and to deliver you into this world. She put your needs above her needs. She was giving her life for your life. And that's why you're here. And You got through the first 20 years of your life. Okay, for you, some of you, that was long ago. But you got through the first 20 years of your life only because your parents made an incredible amount of sacrifices for you, right? What did they do? They kissed the life they had goodbye. They kissed their money goodbye. And I know that very well. I'm still kissing today, you know? But how do you think you even got here, guys? It was their life for your life. So please, however old you are, if your parents are still alive, go back and honor them. Be grateful to them. Treat them with respect, even if they keep asking you the same question about how to use the smartphone. Okay? I mean, they really gave their lives for your lives, and that's why you're here. That's how life works. That's how relationships work. That's how families and communities are built. That's the basic decision that we all make every day of our lives, many times a day. It's true in marriages as well. Marriages thrive not because the couple is so compatible or because the conditions are so favorable, all the things they need. When marital conflict or breakdown happens, it is always because one or both of them have prioritized his or her own need over the spouse's. And when marriages flourish, it is invariably because both parties have chosen intentionally to put the other person's needs first. Okay? Actually, that's marriage counseling. That's all you really need to know. Okay? Just apply that, it will work. Okay? You have a great marriage. If you don't apply that, you never have a great marriage. It's like, this week I read about the guy who bought 2 tickets to fly on a 12-hour flight. You know, his wife and himself. I think it's on Reddit. And so he bought 2 economy class tickets. And then, after that, he decided to upgrade his own seat to business class with his mouse. And he didn't upgrade his wife. So the wife was upset with him and said, "How can you do this to me?" And then he went onto the forum and asked people, "Why is my wife upset? After all, we are going to sleep through those 12 hours anyway." Guys, if you ever do something like that, please don't tell people you're from Brighton Community Church. You see, I mean, in a good marriage, what you do is you tell your spouse, "Come, I let you have the better one." Your spouse says, No, you have the better one. And then together, at the end of the day, you say, "Look, we either suffer together or we enjoy together." And that's how you build a great marriage. Amen? Amen? I mean, this is how it works. It's either I put my needs first or I put your needs first. And it's the same, in church, right? Listen, this church, Brighton Community Church, exists as it is today only because a great number of people intentionally decided that they were going to give up lots of their time, lots of their money, and some of them even their careers for the sake of other people. And that's why we're here today. And because they chose to do that, thank God, all of us have been greatly blessed. You have been greatly blessed. Many of you were saved here. You were nurtured here spiritually. You received lots of practical help in your life, in your child raising, in your business, in your work. Many of you even met the people you're now happily married to and enjoy the wonderful family that you have. Only because many people chose to put the needs of other people before their own. In Chinese, we have a wonderful saying, it's called 饮水思源. That's right. Come on, guys. We are not self-made people. Okay, every good thing we have, the good life we have, the good things we have, life happens. Good things happen only because some people put our needs before theirs. And not only that, this church will only remain strong and great and life-giving if many people continue to say and to believe that and to commit themselves to giving up lots of their time, lots of their money, and some of you even giving up their careers for the sake of other people. That's how relationships are built. That's how community is built. So conversely, if church members are focused on meeting their own needs first, their own preferences first, what we will end up with, it will not just be a weakened, anemic church. What we will actually have is lots of strife, lots of disunity, lots of conflict. And it's exactly the same in the cell groups they are in. Right? Every one of us long to be in a great cell group, right? But how do we build a great cell group? Not when everybody want to operate according to their own schedule, their own childcare arrangement, their own timing, their own preference, their own convenience. You will never have a great cell group. It happens only when people say, I will make the adjustments. I will bear the burden. Okay, I will go the extra mile. I will step up and be a cell group leader. And then you will build a great cell group because that's how life works. Okay? We have strife because we are selfish. And selfishness is about the internal struggle that we grapple with every day, many times a day, in the way we relate to other people. Will it be me first, or will it be other people first? Earthly, demonic, and false wisdom tells us that taking care of your own needs, following the desires of your own heart, doing your own thing is the key to advancement and happiness. But we go down that path, what we will end up with is relational breakdown and every disorder. The wisdom that comes down from above, on the other hand, tells us that selflessness not only builds relationships and communities, it will also bring about true satisfaction, significance, and meaning into our lives. That's the first thing. Dealing with strife and the solution to it. Number two, let's move on to the second thing. The second major problem that stops us from having good relationships. You know, by the way, if you may look in the outline, you realize I only got 2 points today. Okay, people say that I preach too long, so I repent, you know. So today only 2 points. So the second point is this. Number two is slander and self-righteousness. Slander and self-righteousness. Now the British say slander. The Americans say slander. Okay? I think slander is far better because it sounds far worse. Okay, it sounds a lot more slanderous, right? Now, what is slander? Legally, slander involves saying something that is untrue about another person. But it's not just anything, any untruth. It must be an untruth that damages his reputation. In fact, if you're sued for slander, it is a complete defense to prove that whatever bad things you allege was indeed true. You might say something terrible about the guy, but it's true. That's called the defense of justification. Because as far as the law is concerned, no one can claim damage for a reputation that he did not deserve in the first place. So if it's true, too bad for you. So, application. So if you say, Pastor Tiang, he's tall, he's dark, he's handsome, would that be untrue? Speak the truth in love, guys. Yes, of course, that's untrue. Right? But would it be slander? No, because that enhances my reputation. It doesn't damage it. Right? So go on, guys. Feel free to spread that rumor around. How about if you say this? You say, Pastor Tiak, he's short, he has no hair, he talks too much. Would that be slander legally? Again, no, because it is true. Even though it's not nice. Right? So legally, slander has to be both untrue as well as damaging to the reputation. But you know something? That's the law. That's the civil law. The Bible goes way beyond what the civil law prescribes. Okay, it holds us to a far higher standard. James chapter 4, verses 11 and 12, brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you're not keeping it, but sitting in judgment of it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy, but you. Who are you to judge your neighbor? What is the difference between the legal standard and the biblical standard of slander? Well, first, the original Greek here in the Bible does not require what is said to be untrue, only that it is unfavorable. Huh? Okay, so as far as the Bible is concerned, you slander someone, you may say something that is true but not nice. Secondly, what James objects to is speaking against a brother or sister, meaning saying something disparaging, regardless of veracity or accuracy. Finally, his explanation of why slander is wrong has nothing to do with bearing false witness, with lying, but has everything to do with being judgmental. And he goes on quite a bit about that, right? He says that speaking against a brother is tantamount to speaking against the law and sitting in judgment of it, and that we are in effect putting ourselves above the law, and not only that, above the lawgiver, God himself. Now, I have a question for you. When James says, okay, he talks about judging the law, putting ourselves above the law, do you think he's referring to one law specifically or the entire law? Now, do you think he is saying that when we slander people, we're putting ourselves above the entire law, or does he have one particular law in mind? I think he gives us a clue, because how does he end? He says, who are you to judge? And he could have ended there with a full stop. Who are you to judge? But he doesn't stop there. He says, who are you to judge your neighbor? Who are you to judge your neighbor? That is the key. What law is he referring to? He's talking about one particular law. What law is he referring to? The law found in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. The very same law that Jesus affirmed as being one of the two greatest laws in the scriptures. And actually, it's the same law that James has already cited in chapter 2 when he spoke against discrimination. The law is love your neighbor as yourself. When you judge other people, when you slander them, that is the law that you are breaking. Because none of us wants other people to say bad things about us, right? Even if what they say is true. Okay, we don't want people to say bad things about us or dig out our past, and hence the Bible is commanding us to refrain from speaking against other people, whether it is true or it is untrue. Now, at this point, it is important to clarify that the Bible does not use the word judge in the same way as modern culture uses it. Okay, this is a very popular word or expression in a culture, don't judge, right? In a culture, the idea of not judging actually means never thinking or saying that anything is wrong with anybody else. Okay, never coming to the conclusion that anyone is wrong about anything. That's the modern idea of not judging. It cannot be what James means, otherwise he himself be seriously guilty of judging. Okay, in his letter, just here only, in verse 2, okay, in this chapter, he tells them they are covetous and accuses them of killing. In chapter 3, verse 3 accuses them of having wrongful motives. And if you get to verse 4 is not in your outline, but next week. Verse 4 is the worst. You know what he writes, what he calls his readers? You adulterous people. That's what he says. That's how he addresses them. Actually, in original Greek, it's even worse. It's you adulteresses. Wow. Interesting, huh? I'll let Brother Sing Ming explain next week. Okay? But the point is, isn't all that slander? Isn't he speaking against his brothers? Isn't he judging? Answer is, no, of course not. The difference is that James says it to them in love, for their good. He doesn't say it out of arrogance, pride, spite, or in retaliation. And we know that because if you read on, he'll go on to say that his desire is that God will give them more grace, his desire that God will draw near to them, his desire that God will lift them up. He desires the best for them. That's why he's saying these things. So, where's judging others? Judging others is not simply saying negative things or forming negative thoughts about them. It is when you say it in a self-righteous spirit, sitting in judgment of them. Selfishness means you put the needs of other people beneath your own. Self-righteousness means you put other people under you. You consider yourself to be superior to them. Okay, judging is when you criticize others out of disdain or to get back at them or because, you just have an uncontrolled tongue. This is one of the most important principles of building good relationships. Refrain from speaking ill of others out of self-righteousness, whether what you want to say is true or false. In fact, the only times when you should say anything negative about other people is in the spirit of humility, out of heart of love, and with the intention of their good. Now, this is easy to say, but so hard to do, right? I'll be first to confess that I break this rule. So I've broken this rule so often, and every day, if I'm not vigilant enough, I'll break that rule again, right? Because, this is what Pastor Lee has said about the tongue. It's set on fire by hell itself. We all struggle with a slandering tongue, right? Yeah, 6 foot long, 6 inches long, that can kill a man 6 foot tall, right? Now, this is especially true when someone upsets us, lets us down, angers us, doesn't live up to our expectations. When that happens, listen, there are 2 things we must not do. First, we must not go around complaining about them to everybody else. Don't slander them. Secondly, we must not nurse our hurt. Okay, that's the opposite. Nurse our hurt. Withdraw, cut off relationship from them. Okay? Either response is not only selfish, but self-righteous as well. The right thing, the biblical thing to do is to go to that person, take the initiative, go to that person and try and resolve with him and restore relationship. This is so crucial. Jesus even laid down a procedure. Okay, he seldom does this, right? He teaches principles, truths, but actually he laid down a practical procedure for people who observe or perceive that their brother is sinning. You know what he says to do? He says, number 1, go to them alone and have a conversation with them. Talk to them about it. Don't go and talk to other people about that person. Go and talk to that person. Well, if you cannot settle it between the 2 of you, then you bring another brother along. 2 of you, give him another chance. And hopefully that will resolve it. Finally, cannot resolve, then if it's a serious matter, bring it before the church so that it can be dealt with. Okay, that's all that is found in Matthew chapter 18. Why did Jesus give us this very detailed procedure? Answer, to protect us against the 2 things that we tend to do wrongly when we get upset with other people. Okay, number 1, go around slandering a person. Number 2, cut off all interaction. Avoid that person. Okay, and then justify very nice sounding things. I'm not angry with him now. I already forgiven him in my heart already. I move on already. Okay, you just bury it inside. But we ought to distinguish. What ought to distinguish Christian community is that it is a culture of grace. We should eagerly affirm the good that we see each other and be very careful, okay, not to criticize each other. We don't dig up bad things from the past to make people look bad, feel bad, or we don't judge people by how they behave when at their worst. In fact, we believe the best of each other, we forgive each other, we build each other up, and help each other to grow. And James is saying that, look, if you are truly Christians, then this is the kind of community you will build. Unfortunately, it's quite jarring, right? Reading what James has said that, wow, there's all these fights and quarrels among you, and he's talking to the church. Unfortunately, church ought to be the lovey-dovey place, right? Okay, with this ideal, exalted ideal of church, wow, everybody ought to do the right thing, be nice, all that. Well, the reality, there's some of the ugliest disputes and fights, happen in churches. I can say that from personal experience, the worst conflicts I ever experienced in my life, so painful, happened 24 years ago in my previous church. I was then leading a group of young people, and we had a vision to go and plant a new church, a new worship center under our church's authority and blessing. And we spoke to my senior pastor about it. He was very supportive of our plan, but as we discussed, he said, look, all this will work much better why don't you come in full-time, okay, and lead this group as a full-time person. So I went back, prayed about it, and though I was reluctant, I thought, okay, if this is what it takes to make the vision work, fine. Okay, and I went back, told him, yes, I'll do it, but just give me a few months, wrap up my work, okay? Before that could happen, all hell broke loose. Okay, my church decided to remove the senior pastor, and people were very angry. It exploded into a full-blown crisis. Some of you were there. Okay, you remember that. Those were terrible days. I mean, church members squared off against each other into different factions, accused each other, all kinds of wrongful acts and evil motives. I was going from meeting to meeting every night. You know, my son was newborn at that time, first one. You know, and my wife's upset. Why do you keep going every night for meetings? You know, meeting various groups of people, all very angry and all insisting that they are right, other people are wrong. And I mean, I've only been in that church like 17 years at a time, but the people in the church for 20 years, 30 years, and overnight, they became bitter enemies. That's church for you. Okay, it's not an uncommon story. The turmoil lasted for 4 long, intense, and horrendous months, and it ended with a very bitter split. In the aftermath, the church broke up spectacularly and publicly. Everyone who was a Christian in Christian circles knew about it. We were that infamous. Well, several hundred of us left that church along with the senior pastor, okay, thinking that, okay, you can plant another church. Right? Subsequently, our mother church also broke into 2. Bartley Christian Church, Pasir Ris Christian Church, later renamed River Life Church. And so the growth of us who left, we wandered around for quite a few months before we realized that, actually, my former senior pastor, he was not interested in pastoring anymore. He was going to start another church. So after discussing with the leaders of the group, we decided to come out from that group to plant Brighton Community Church. And here we are today. That's how we started. Very, very painful and negative circumstances. But in that crisis, there was one person that I held primarily responsible. Right? I was very angry with him. I hated his guts. It was Pastor Vincent Loon. Some of you may know him. And I really resented him because when we started a church, I was still working. Life was so hard, newborn baby. And he had messed up my life. He had messed up our plans. So I gleefully slandered him everywhere I could. Well, one day he came to meet me for lunch at my workplace, Raffles Place. And he tried to extend an olive branch to me, right? But I was still so angry inside. I just rebuffed his efforts, rejected his offer of friendship, and I told him this. I said, look, so many people are still hurting. This whole thing is such a mess. I wonder, when we get to heaven, what God is going to say to us for all this mess that we have created. Of course, when I say we, I meant him, And I remember his answer because it made me really mad. His answer to me was, Tiang, I think when we get to heaven, we will realize that God is far more gracious than we imagine. And I was thinking, wow, this guy caused so much problem, so much damage, and now, wow, so spiritualized everything, and then cheapened the grace of God. So I refused to have anything to do with him anymore for many, many years. I think about 15 years passed. One day, I ran into him outside of St. Andrew's Cathedral. I remember that day. It's just it's really a divine orchestration. Okay, I went down there. I wanted to inspect some document in the Supreme Court because of the dispute that was going on in my condominium. So, I don't go back there anymore, right? But that day I was walking there, and then I ran into him. And by that time, he had left River Life Church. He was pastoring River Life Church. He had left to start another church called Kingdom Community Church. And he told me, hey, there's an initiative to bring about reconciliation between the leaders of Bartley Christian Church, River Life Church, and Kingdom Community Church. In fact, they proposed to set up a fellowship called the Bartley Family of Churches. And they asked me whether we would be interested to join in. So after thinking about it, I submitted it to our church council, and they said, okay, let's do it. So I agreed that we will be part of fellowship and went to attend a 3-day, 2-night retreat with the other leaders and pastors. And at that retreat, I was very nervous going there. I've not met this guy for a long time, right? And we parted so badly. I just wondered what good will come out of this. But when I was there, God convicted me to seek their forgiveness for the part that I had played in the sorry saga. And somehow I realized actually it is not so important to me anymore what the issues were. Things we fight over, I'm so passionate about. Okay, not that truth is not important, right and wrong is not, but actually, I had a new perspective that really a lot of it is not just about truth, but about my motives, about personalities. And anyway, I just told them that, I did a lot of things that were wrong. I contributed to the problem. And I asked, especially Pastor William Lee, because he was the chairman of the elders board at that time back in my old church, asked him for his forgiveness. And they graciously extended forgiveness to me and gave me the right hand of fellowship. It's just so incredible. In my wildest imagination, I could not have envisaged that something like that would ever happen. But since then, the senior pastors of the 4 churches have been meeting up for lunch every month, almost without skipping a beat. And I have gone for 4 annual retreats with them. And from being public enemy number 1, I can tell you with sincerity that Pastor Vincent has become a dear friend whom I greatly respect, trust, and love. And yesterday he was just inviting me to go to Israel with him, and I said, I really look forward to that. That church breakup was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced relationally. But the reconciliation and mutual friendship we now have is one of the most treasured things in my life. Maybe it's about aging also. Really, as you grow older, you realize, when you're younger, you want to prove yourself, fight and, establish things, make the point. As you grow older, you realize that, come on, actually all these things are, what's so important about them? What really matters? Our relationships with people, right? In fact, to this day, I remember that very night, when I asked for forgiveness, and we reconciled. After that, I went back to my hotel room, and I just experienced a powerful sense of healing I never knew I needed. It surprised me. Many years have already passed, right? And these people, they were no longer in my life. They were no longer on my mind. We've established Brighton Community Church. We've done a fairly good job and nothing to prove to anyone anymore. Why do I care any longer what they think or what happened so long ago? Or, the people that were involved. Yet to my surprise that night, I realized that there was an unhealed wound buried that I pushed deep, deep down into my heart that I didn't even know was there. And I discovered its existence because I felt such a great sense of peace and joy. I think the only time I ever had that depth of that kind of emotion was on the night that I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And above all, I just sensed, in my hotel room by myself, I just sensed the pleasure of God. Because like a father looking down on his children, fielding children, finally mutually forgiving and affirming each other in love, he was just pleased, honored in a way that nothing else could ever bring about. And so today, guys, I just want to close by telling you this. Please take this to heart. We seriously underestimate how much our unity and harmony means to our Heavenly Father. How much God cherishes the mutual love of His children. And James is telling us, look guys, if you claim that you're Christians, not only should it come out visibly in your life, it must come out visibly in the community that you're in. Not that you'll be a perfect community with discord, but you, if you're truly saved, you will do everything within your power, with God's help, to resolve conflicts. You not slander people, right? Not slander people. You not avoid the people you get upset with. You not walk away from the community. You don't cover up that with all kinds of very spiritual sounding excuses. I feel like I'm no longer been growing. Okay, I've been growing. My wife not growing. I hear all these things. People, maybe it's a season for us to move on. I think the sermons no longer meet my needs. Whatever truth there is in all those things, look, it's a smoke screen. At the end of the day, the real issue is whether we understand that this matters to our Father. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy to forgive. It's not easy to take the initiative to be reconciled. It's not easy to take the risk that the other person may not want to be reconciled with you. It's not easy to be humble. It's not easy to acknowledge that you played a part in it. It's not easy to say, let's be friends again and let's rebuild this relationship. But that is precisely why Christ came to die for us. Not just to make us right with God, but also to make us right with each other as well. Can you say amen to that? And I can tell you, I now know for sure that when we get to heaven, we will find that God is indeed far more gracious than we could ever imagine. And it's precisely His grace that enables us to live in unity and harmony, okay, to resolve, to live a life that adds to community, not to strive, to hold our tongues and not slander other people, not to judge them, not to set ourselves above them. It is because we have experienced the grace of God. And that is the kind of church we must build. Because when we do that, it is good for us. It is good for the relationships. It is good for the community. It pleases the Father, and it enhances the witness of the church.